Hey everybody, so there is a dev blog here on EVE Online with the second timer in M2-XFE. So this is from the devs talking about the war, the part 2 of our little Titan war that didn't go so well, and I guess the devs are going to kind of talk about what happened and give us some information. So let's go ahead and check this out, and I get to brush up on my reading skills. Well, usually reading's fine, saying it out loud, yeah. On Saturday the 2nd of January, both sides of the month-long null-sec war in New Eden gathered for another showdown in the system of M2-XFE. The fight was supposed to be a follow-up to the biggest Titan clash in EVE history, which occurred just 2 days prior. This battle did not unfold the way anyone expected it to. A large portion of the attacking side experienced in-game issues, which resulted in devastating loss for them. So they're admitting that, obviously bad issues happen there. So unprecedented war, unprecedented battle. The ongoing war in New Eden has seen some of the largest, bloodiest battles in EVE history. The war has already claimed 2 official Guinness Book World Records, while also breaking many other EVE records, including a record of number of battleships killed in one battle and a record number of Titans destroyed in another. The second fight in M2-XFE was the next step in the evolution of these unprecedented fights. 3 systems in Delve were focused on of the fight. So 1DQ1A, a defender staging. I didn't actually realize there was another zone. The Z5ZIS, the attacking stage. So that was, the Papi or whatever. And then the Goon Imperium or whatever was in M2-XFE. So I didn't realize they had another one there. Interesting. So the 1DQ1A players counted toppled at 4,226. So yeah, I didn't realize there was a huge number missing. And T5ZIS hit 6,723. And where the player count in the target system of M2-XFE went to the highest of 6,739 pilots, breaking the Fury of STW record of 6,557. There was 3 systems which were each reinforced, saw a combined peak of 13,770 players around 23 EVE time. Isn't that insane to think about that? So even though, there was large forces, like the battlefield could have easily seen close to, maybe 10,000. I should say pretty damn close, right? It wasn't even about that. It was all the systems around it were also part of it, even if it was defending or doing other things, which is insane when you think about it. To put things in perspective, approximately 35% of all pilots, online pilots in the game were situated in these 3 systems. That is amazing. These numbers are unrivaled, and unrivaled numbers in New Eden lead to uncharted territories when it comes to performance. Neither side of the war or CCP can or could or will be able to predict server performance in these kinds of situations. Weird events during and after the battle. So of the 3 nodes, attackers, so there were 3 nodes up. So basically a node, they call them a node, and it makes sense. It's like a Blade server or something they're probably running it on, right? So it's a dedicated server that probably runs multiple systems. When they're so heavy like this, they probably were smart enough and moved them around. So, it was one single system on one single node, right? So then that way it wasn't lagging out. The attackers, staging, defender, staging, and fight. Okay, so of the 3 nodes, attacker staging and defending staging and fight, 2 were under heavy load, the Z5ZI and the M2. Since both had about 5 to 6K pilots, as pilots attempted to jump from one heavy loaded to another, they experienced odd, unresponsive game behavior. This was simply brutal symptom of what happens when there's a great deal of activity between 2 heavy loaded systems. Both during and after the fight, players experienced things that that don't happen normally under circumstances. These things like ships disappearing, ships reappearing, ships not appearing in the right system, even after going through the jump tunnel. Ghost kill mills, duplicated ships, mods where wrecks with loot was in M2-XFE, but fitted ships was in Z5ZIS. Bridging Titans getting moved to the system. It was bridging people to, among others, blah, blah, blah. So basically it was a beyond a chaotic mess. This is what happens. This is actually why, if people wonder why they do the time dilation, I'm just going to let you know right off the bat, this is actually kind of why it happens. Because when things get too many things start going at once, things kind of get unorganized, disarrayed, and bloom, and it either black screens, it just like stalls out. That's it. It's gone. Or some things might get processed and other things won't get processed. That's especially crazy when you deal with multi-threaded applications, which Eve multi-threaded, the more I thought about it, it's possible, but it would be beyond a rewrite. It wouldn't just be a rewrite. It would be beyond a rewrite to do such a system. But yeah, it's staggering when you think of that. And then you can almost think of that as there are two systems in this, right? So there's the one system and the other system. They were trying to combine into one system. So consider that like threading almost, right? So their main server kind of keeps things organized and, communication between those two nodes. But basically things started to go chaotic and crazy. So in a sense, they have, one system per machine. Obviously, it's still bottlenecking on that machine on its primary thread running it, right? So it wouldn't matter if you have 64 or 128 cores. It's literally probably a server with like even 8 cores or something like that. It's the main, thread that's bottlenecking. And so when you're taking two separate threads in a sense and you're trying to merge those together like with the players and organize that and send that information between them, the information is actually getting lost, and it's actually a great representation of what happens, especially when you deal with multi-threading and high performance, not high performance, heavy load, and how if the main thread can't kind of keep up, things can get disarray, and it's a mess. Obviously, this is what happened in this case. Like I said, I don't think their actual nodes are multi-threaded. I mean, I'm sure there's parts of it, some functions, some calculations or info that are multi-threaded, but they'll still have a single thread on that system, for example, that would be just bottlenecking, and that's where you start lagging out. So that time dilation is at least to throttle it so it can, take its time and go through the information a bit better. Many of these unusual events have not happened in recent times, although some veterans will remember that they have been seen before. And it's largely because the increasing size of the large battles have been more gradual over the last 10 years. However, this fight dwarfed any previous engagements in New Eden, had every player who was trying to get into M2-XFE successfully done so. It would have been nearly double the Guinness Book of Records of concurrent players in a single fight with approximately 12,000 players. Okay, so they're thinking it would have been more 12,000. I don't know if it would have hit that high. I mean, it could have been. I mean, if it was stable, let's put it this way. If it was stable and, let's just say this engine was the dream engine, or CPUs actually hit 20 gigahertz, like Intel had predicted back in, 2000 or whatever, then yeah, I believe that number could have hit that. But knowing how slow things would have gotten and how bad things people usually assume things would happen, a lot of people would have probably stepped outside of the system just to not be in that. You know what I mean? But I bet you it could have easily hit 10,000. If things were going okay. Population cap and player entering the system. There has been ongoing discussion regarding population cap in the M2-XFE. Yeah, I saw this nonstop, which was not the case, because population cap would stop at like a certain number. Like they say here, JITA 4,000. It's not 5,200 and something, plus it was going up. It was derping. It was just the two nodes were so heavy that, it couldn't process over. This was a huge one I never believed in, but everyone said, oh, they're capping our system and blah, blah, blah. The only system in the game that has a population cap is JITA to avoid system going into time dilation. There was no population cap set for M2-XFE. And they even show a picture because people don't believe them. There it is. The table of system with population cap set. There you go. There's only one. Okay, and what players were seeing in their client call log was a standard call that is an everyday occurrence. The client will call every jump, and when logging in to check if there's a population cap on the destination system, so something in the log popped up and they probably freaked out even more. In this case, was not receiving a reply from the heavily loaded system, the population cap being one of the different calls, and it wasn't receiving back. So basically, calls are like a packet being sent. So it's literally sending that that packet, or I guess the call, to make it simple here. Hello, are we allowed to enter? computer, and unfortunately it stalls out, right? There's no response, so the client just assumes, oh, nope, sorry, there's no reply back. While there's no population cap, players did have trouble entering the system, which was an unfortunate symptom of the sheer scale of this fight. This caused a great deal of unexpected outcomes and has understandably been the cause of great frustration for many players. Another discussion has resolved around whether players could have loaded given enough time. Due to the unprecedented circumstances, any discussion on that is theoretical. What can, however, be said is that we've received reports of players waiting for their jump tunnel to end up traveling, but to the same system as they originally were in. Reimbursement. As per usual, our policy, customer support will not be reimbursing any losses or moving players between systems. It is our policy not to get involved with fleet fights, and this policy has been upheld during this war for both sides. Conclusion. CCP and the pilots of New Eden have long engaged petrol arms race. Players push the envelope of what's possible and continue to improve performance with improved hardware, software, and changes to the mechanics of the game. As EVE, players continue to create larger and larger wars with bigger and more epic battles every week. These battles continue to bring the game to unknown territory. We salute all the players and their efforts and their ambitions. This ongoing war, which at times had unfortunate moments for both sides, it continuously reshapes the landscape of New Eden and adding new and exciting stories to the history of EVE Online. So there you go. And for people who might speak other languages, this article will be available in other supported languages later this week. So there you guys have it. So that's their, their statement. It's pretty almost lawyered up in a way, some of the wording. Somebody who definitely knows to write it in a way that doesn't, sound crazy. But that's insane if you think about it. So there's 6,000 or 7,000 systems in the game, and 35% of all the population was in 3 of those systems. So that's pretty insane. That's like really next level craziness there. Pretty exciting if you think about it. And I bet you if you count like Jitta or something at the same time, it could have been like, oh, they're 60%. You know what I mean? It would have been something silly anyways. Maybe not quite, but so yeah, I'm happy the devs commented on that. I'm glad to hear what they said. I'd love to hear more on what their hardware is like these days, what kind of improvements they use, what kind of I know they're never going to do this, but what kind of hardware are you using, like CPU wise, on the servers? Obviously you're going to probably have some degree of multi-threading in a solar system, whether it's it's probably like pathfinding, for example. Pathfinding would make sense if it was coded on a single thread. It's one of the easier ones to throw on another thread. If somebody's a programmer out there, they could probably tell me that, you could probably separate pathfinding, for example, on a single thread. And when I say pathfinding, it would be like the calculation. So calculating a route from A to B, for example, would be like a pathfinding. And that can be done usually through another thread, which is not too much. But I would assume no matter what, they have a main thread that is toppling down. So do they need 8 cores on the server, like this server, for example, the one that runs the solar system, the nodes? They can have like 20 solar systems or even 100 solar systems probably on a node, but the ones that end up being a little heavy when they probably go through downtime, things like that, I'm assuming it moves and automatically scales around. So I played around with EverQuest 1 emulator a long time ago that did this, and it was amazing. And basically I ran it on like 3 or 4 different computers, and the way it would work is if a system opened, like actually this one was nicer in a sense, but if somebody goes to a system, it would open it up on the server, and basically you'd have like a usage. So if it gets to like maybe the 30 or 40% usage mark, it would then spawn it onto one of the other nodes on the other computer I was running, and basically it would just kind of flow its way through there and then just kind of equalize. And I can make it equalize in a sense like, oh heck, just open it from here and this one and this one and this one, and then keep, which whenever is the lowest usage, then open the next one there, and whatever is the next lowest, do it that way. They might even have something like that. It sounds like they have something similar to that probably, and then what they have is a dedicated one. Like they have a manual control, so like they will literally say, okay, M2 has its own node. Another one has its own node. Another one has its node. So Jitta is probably on its own server, period, always. It never is never on any other system, for example. So if you've ever seen time dilation in JITA, which I don't know if that's actually ever happened, more than likely all the systems surrounding it probably never had the time dilation. So that makes sense. When we originally went to the M2 fight, I'm pretty sure a couple of the systems around it were affected. Now, would have it killed the performance that much? Probably not, because if there's only like 50, 100 people not doing too much, maybe docked, whatever, it wouldn't have been a huge impact anyways. But obviously, from what I could tell, it seemed when the second fight came up for M2, I believe at that point, M2 was completely isolated on its own at that point. Somebody would have to correct me because I didn't actually make it quite that far. Somebody took me out at the... Care Bear took me out on my shuttle at one of the gates nearby. I call them Care Bears because they're killing a shuttle. Come on, you little. But anyways, I'm really excited by this. But yeah, I'm really interested in knowing like what is the hardware on a node like these days. What is required? What is threaded? What is the biggest bottleneck? I love to know more details on that. Not giving anything that might be a security or problematic issue for them. And I'm not here to insult them either. CCP, you should rewrite your game. I can't expect that. You know what? If EVE was more popular than it is now, or if they felt like they could take the risk and they can pay for it, then that wouldn't be so bad. But we're talking about it could be easily tens of millions of dollars. You're writing an engine from scratch. You're not even taking what they have and building onto it. You're talking about literally going into C++, whatever, and writing it from 100% scratch. They can't just go and, we're going to use Unity. No. It'd be literally writing the code from scratch from the beginning, pretty much, to do a correctly multi-threaded thing. And it would be the client as well. The client probably could work, but it would be kind of messy too, right? For the communication back and forth. If you're going to rewrite the server completely, more than likely you're going to end up probably doing a big, huge overhaul on the client too, just because of the way it communicates, how it communicates. A lot of things would change. But either way, that was good. I'm glad they wrote that. I'm glad about that. They didn't say anything about the ghosts, though. I believe that the ghosts, if they survive and they're not causing, if the ghosts themselves, like the ghost titans, are not causing any issues, as in it has special powers now, or it's invulnerable, or things like that, but it's acting like a regular titan ship. So, you go into a battlefield, it can die, it can live, it acts the same as, what it was before. I believe the Titan ship shouldn't be touched. Obviously, things went crazy. Some ships survived, some didn't, some kind of did this weird ass thing. But at that point, I would say, that's just like a bug. Like they said, things went crazy, it got unstable. So, the ones that you destroyed, and the few that got in there, well, they're saying basically the servers went to hell, Unfortunately, that's what happens. We can't reimburse you. Well, the same thing as, the other faction, Imperium, I've seen a lot of posts saying, well, we want the ghost guys gone and removed. Well, no, unfortunately, it doesn't work one way. It works both ways. You know what I mean? So if some people got out of there somehow magically because it's glitched broken, you know what? That's just how it is. Obviously, if, people were purposely exploiting and cheating, that's one thing. I heard people were logging off and stuff like that, but honestly, it was completely broken. People's clients were freezing. When I was there the first time around, my client even froze at one point. So either way, I think, I think it's fair, as long as, like I said, the ghost ones aren't going to, do anything magical at this point, that they get to keep it. And and then hopefully, there could be some improvements. Hopefully some magical, big tweak can one day be done, with all this, and maybe they can find a way to one day let 12,000 players on the battlefield, because that would be epically amazing. Or, maybe one day there would be a way to somehow disperse the load, like maybe change something. Like you got the Citadel thing, right? I forget what the name is. I always forget the name, but maybe some sort of new mechanism where there's like pylons or something in multiple systems that power it or something, and people have to go after them or something strategically. And, they're very powerful and they're well guarded and things like that. And, I'm just thinking there could be some new methods and new ways down the road. I'm not saying they have to break and destroy the game in one way, but there could be ways to try to disperse the large amount of players in a single fight, but to multiple systems at once that can contribute to it in a sense. But anyways, we'll see if something like that can ever happen. That's probably not something they're thinking of anyways. But either way, thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, comment, like, and we'll see wonderful people next time. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.